In this podcast, I'm going to be speaking to Sara Mastros. The first bit of the recording is recorded in a restaurant, which was a little bit noisy, and also my camera work wasn't particularly good. So once Minnie takes over, it's actually much better. But stick with it because it's really interesting, and we sort of go on our adventures a little bit. So enjoy the podcast. Right, okay, so here am I. I'm obviously in a restaurant, and I've got Sara Mastros here. Hello, Sara. So, usual first question is, and I'm going to flip this around so I know what's going on. Oh, I can't actually.
Do you want me to come sit next to you?
Yeah, no, we'll sit like this for a minute, because when Minnie comes over, we're going to talk a little bit more. Where are you, on camera?
Yep.
Good. So, what do you do? That's my traditional first question.
Well, as little as possible.
Really fancy.
So what I normally say is that I write books, I teach witchcraft, and I plant apple trees.
Great, excellent. So obviously we are not in America at the moment. You're over here.
I am.
And yes, well, we're sitting sort of overlooking the water near.
Let's try to show them the view. It's so gorgeous.
Yes, let's do that. Well, apart from the fact it's very wet and misty.
I like wet and misty, very atmospherically witchy.
Exactly. So you've written lots of books, haven't you?
4 or 5.
That's a lot of books. I've only written one. But we've been talking quite a bit over dinner or lunch about some of the differences in what you've seen, like in America with the occult system and what's over here. We've also spoken about other things like the monarchy and politics, but we'll just glass over that a little bit. How did you get involved in the whole occult system? You know, what was your
it sort of depends what you mean, but I feel like in some sense, I sort of feel like all toddlers are witches, and then we're supposed to grow out of it, and that just didn't work on me.
Yeah.
But I will also say, like, I grew up in a family, like, I feel really lucky to have grown up in a family that, like, wasn't witchy or anything, and, like, did my parents approve of my witchcraft? My parents definitely thought that witchcraft was, like, silly, and I was gonna grow out of it.
Yeah.
But there was no, like, disapproval. And, you know, when I was very young, my mother was in graduate school for early childhood education, specializing in, like, children's literature and folk and fairy tales. So I grew up with, like, a lot of, like, world folklore, and I would say probably that's sort of what got me into it, right? Was this sense that when I would hear these stories, I would like, be like, oh, that's a one of me. Like, I'm a witch. But I didn't know there were other witches. So that's when I think of, like, instead of, like, I can't really say how I became a witch or, like, how I got into it. I just never got out of it. But I have a very clear memory of, like, when I found out other people were also into it. And so when I tell this story a lot, and I don't really know how old I was, so it's different every time I tell it, but I'm gonna say in the range of maybe 9 or 10, probably, my mostly estranged grandfather, right, sent me a birthday gift in the mail, although it was not my birthday because that dude didn't know me, so I don't know. My birthday is actually the same day as his wife, so you'd think he would know when my birthday was, but that's a whole other story. He sent me, like, a gift certificate and a catalog to, like, a mail-order book catalog. So for young people, you have to understand this story is set in, like, 1988, maybe. So, like, not only was there not an internet, like, you just didn't know what was happening outside of your little town.
Right.
Like, the books your library had and, like, the one bookstore in town. And so in this book catalog, there in the nonfiction section was witchcraft. And I was like, I know what nonfiction means. That means it's real. And I was like, Mom, are witches real? And my mother very politically said, well, you know, some people think they're witches, which I think all of us in the modern occult know some people who think they're witches. And I was like, can I get one of these books? And she was like, yeah, but it's gonna be disappointing. Like, you can, but it's gonna be disappointing. And so I ordered 2, and one was the Encyclopedia of White Witchcraft by Patty Slade, which was like a very sort of like coffee table beginner book about what I think we would now call perhaps like British traditional witchcraft. But it was very glossy, and it had these gorgeous full color illustrations and like path workings, and like aesthetically I was there for it.
Yeah. So
But
basically it was a spell being cast on you.
Yes. Although I would be hard pressed to say a single thing I learned from that book. There wasn't really much like content in it.
Right.
Like, no shame on Patty Slade, like, I'm just saying, this is clearly intended as a coffee table book, right? And the other one I got was, I feel bad because I don't even know what this book is called. I just call it Buckland's Big Blue Book of Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo. Everybody knows what I mean. Young people don't know what I mean, but older people all know what I mean. And that was almost like the opposite. Like, it had quite straightforward, like, I can name things I learned from that book, most of which are good. That witchcraft is real, but it's hard. Like, you have to learn it. It's a skill that you have to develop. That you can find it, like, written between the lines in, like, mythology and history. And, like, I feel like that's the biggest thing I took away from the book. Now, I also took some other things, like, oh, you have to have one he god and one she god, which, like, I was fully prepubescent at this point. So I'll tell you, the, like, sexual relationship between the Lord and the Lady fully lost on me. I was like, mommy, dad, god, and daddy god. And I wasn't really looking for that. So when I had to, like, declare, because the book kind of is like, well, you pick some and you dedicate them. I picked Hermes and Hecate, which, you know, my dad's Greek, so I had a pretty solid grounding in Greek mythology. Which, like, I understand is not who, like, Ray Buckland intended me to pick as a Lord and Lady, but has been working great for me. Like, I definitely picked, the witch ones, and that went great. And that was, I don't know, 12 or 13 when I dedicated myself to that, and that's been going very well. So I keep doing that. And I would say, like, that's how I got into it, right? And then for a long time, I sort of, like, bounced around. And we were talking earlier that, like, when I was getting into magic, so now we're in, like, the early 90s, right? And so what you would hear, at least in the States, the advice would be was like, look into your ancestral paganisms. Well, I'm Greek on my dad's side and Jewish on my mom's side, and that is a very rich area of occult study. So that led me into sort of like Golden Dawn style ceremonial stuff, which, you know, here's the thing, I'm good at that. Like, I'm a proper nerd. So, like, giant lists of, like, wizard correspondences, like, yes, please, that's the exact kind of autistic I am. I would like to make a giant list of gods and pretend they're equivalent to each other, thank you. But, you know, it didn't, the vibe of it wasn't quite what I was looking for. And also, I will say, again, this is a point about the very specific individuals that I encountered. That was not a safe community for young women to be in. Like, that sort of Golden Dawn, bulimic community was not a safe place for young women to be in. And also, I was already in math at that point, so it's not like I didn't know how to navigate the good old boy club, but I didn't want to do that. And also, having grown up Jewish, a lot of their mystic secrets were like, that's cool, we teach this to children. Like, this is not a mystic secret, like, this is Hebrew school. And then, you know, I just sort of floated around, and then I sort of landed in Solomonic magic, and I would say that's really where I, like, cut my teeth as a magician, right? Like, that was the first things that I encountered where I was like, oh, this is the real magic that I've been looking for. Which now I understand, like, that real magic exists in all the kinds of magic, but that's where I found it, right? Like, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this. And then I don't know, kept doing that. And I would say, like, that's still sort of, like, the vibe of my practices. You've got, like, a Hermes Hecate kind of, like, not necessarily Wiccan style witchcraft, like, not witchcraft as a religion, but witchcraft as a, like, crossroads solidarity sorcery kind of vibe. And then this more, like, nerdy Solomonic magic in a quite Jewish sense, right? Because when I read Solomonic Magic, I was still quite young. Like I was probably 15 when I read the Key of Solomon, and so I just like believed it. Like, oh, this is the magic King Solomon taught, but obviously this book was written by Christians, so they have corrupted Solomon's magic. So I just took out all the Christian bits and like put in Jewish bits, and that worked fine. And that's kind of how I started. And I still do it that way. So that's a very, very long answer to your quite straightforward
That's
question.
really good. What we're going to do, Minnie's here now, so Minnie's going to take over the phone. You do that.
I will take over the phone.
Here before I want to... Okay. So sorry about that. We just got our tea, and I lost my train of thought a little bit. So what I was saying is that, like, I grew up in a place that more so than many Americans, like, one, I grew up with like 2 intact cultural transitions. Like, I was Jewish and I was Greek, and like that meant things that informed how we lived our life in a way that many Americans, I would say most white Americans, grew up with none of that. And I think that's sad. I think that is an intentional move by colonialism to deprive people of that because it makes them easier to control. But also with this like genuine connection to land, and like the notion that like maybe we don't talk about the fact that sometimes we talk to ghosts, but like that was a thing. Like nobody thought you were crazy if you said that out loud, right? So I always had this understanding that it was real, and it was just like I kept looking for it and like not in places where it was supposed to be. So I would go to like Wiccan, by which I mean like American non-initiatory whatever pop Wicca, like, and it wasn't there. Like it wasn't there. Like there was not a magician in that, and that was just disappointing. So I do feel like I sort of stumbled into it in a way that I think for a lot of people, like which kind of magic do you come up in? I do feel like is largely accidental for most people, and at the end of the day matters less. Like I feel like the longer I get into my practice, I feel like the different like styles of magic, like the differences between them, it's not that there aren't differences. There's like cultural understandings and history, but at the end of the day, in terms of like technique, I feel like the biggest difference is like what is considered beginner and what is considered advanced. So like sometimes I will go to somebody else, like Wendy Mata, who is like a Mexican like bruja and like shaman, I guess. I don't know exactly the right word for it. And like I remember her giving this talk, and one, it was very like validated because like the things she was saying about her like traditional family, I was like, oh, that's how I do it too. But then she had a list of like beginner techniques and advanced techniques, and I was like, oh, some of the things on this beginner list, I think it was very advanced, and also the opposite. Like some things that she thought of as very advanced, I'm like, I teach that in lesson 3, and I feel like that's a lot of the differences. Like that those differences, I think everybody. Right? At least for those of us who like don't come up in a tradition, like it's not a family tradition, which I understand now many people are growing up in family witchcraft traditions. That's fascinating. But for most Anglophone people, at least white Anglophone people, but that wasn't a thing, right? When we were young. So I think you just land wherever you land, and you just sort of like smell it until you find the ones like, oh, this smells real, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing. I had I think that where my mother was obviously involved in as a medium, although she wasn't she within like a Christian spiritualist church. I got interested in that because I grew up in an environment where all that, like you're saying, that stuff happened, right? And you didn't question it as being unusual that somebody could hear a voice. But it wasn't like full on all the time, it was just normal. Right? And it took me a long time to realise that other people weren't experiencing things like that at all. I mean, a long time.
Yes, same. I honestly still feel like my life is an evolving process of discovering that I'm even weirder than I thought I was.
Exactly. I think I was in my mid-20s before I realised I was not doing what other people would.
Right.
Yeah, it's a very strange thing. So. And I think with that, you know, and I've said this to many, you don't shut down, you're open, like a kid is open, like you were saying. You know, every young person is a witch or a wizard, really, because their mind's completely open, and you see that with young children with their sort of imaginary friends and all the rest of it.
Right. I think if you ask any 5-year-old, like, which of these trees is your friend, they have an answer to that question. And they'll be like, oh no, this one's mean. I don't like that tree. That tree is mean. I agree.
Exactly. And it's that type of opening that, you know, as we get older, we shut that down. And I think that's interesting that when you see, like you're talking about the sort of traditions, lady was saying where she's got a list of the beginner things and the advanced. When you sort of learn stuff as you go along, if you like, then you do pick up on things that some people get for kind of like, oh my God, can you do that? You know, I mean, I do a lot of, I'm interested in a lot of sort of creative thinking, and a lot of that is, you know, you look at it and you go, it's not that dissimilar from trance stuff, you know. And even like the hypnotic stuff that I've learned NLP, some of those induced states are very, very similar to things I saw mediums do in trance, you know. And you sort of go, right, well, this is a much bigger picture that we don't really know what that is. You know, we can pin it down and say, oh, I think it's this. And that works.
Exactly.
You know, if you think it's that, it's fine. Other people might think, well, it's this, they can explain it that way and it might work for them.
Right.
And I think that's very interesting, and that is a bit like, you know, these are the advanced techniques, you know, because they've come up this pathway and that's the thing that they're aspiring to, and other people just come across that early on.
Right, exactly.
You know, interesting. So the plane, obviously we've got a lot of sound in the back here because we're in a restaurant, aren't we? So hopefully we can hear everything clearly. But we were going to venture out and visit, perhaps I could put you on camera here, Minnie.
Okay.
So we'll swap over here. Okay, right, here we are, Minnie. So where are we off to?
We are currently in Highcliffe in Dorset. It's over the other side of Bournemouth to where we live, east of Bournemouth, and we're on the cliff top, which is wonderful. And we're just about to go this way, just a mile or so north, to see the house that Gerald Gardner lived in when he was being initiated into what is commonly known as the New Forest Coven, and it's a little village called Walkford, which is, funnily enough, where I lived when for the first couple of years of my life. So we're going to go to show Sarah, and I'm going to show you, Vic, for the first time, Gerald Gardner's house, and his initiator, Daffo Edith Woodford Grimes' house, just round the corner. And hopefully, if we get time before light starts to fade, we might go to the house that the coven was alleged to have worked at. So yeah, it's going to be quite interesting. A Wiccan walk.
A Wiccan walk. Bit of alliteration at the end. Where I go.
Hello everybody, so Sarah and Vic and myself have just come around the corner from that wonderful restaurant on the cliff top in the January gloom, but we did see the sea, which was good, and we've come around the corner to the home of Gerald Brousseau Gardner in Highland Road in Walkford, where, funnily enough, I used to live, which was really weird when I found out. I'm just going to turn the film, and here's the house. The blue plaque is there, which is wonderful, and here is our esteemed guests. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, thank you for being here.
Lovely to see you. So Sara Mastros is here with Vic.
Hello.
And myself, and we're just paying homage to the father of modern Wicca, and this is where we are.
Interesting, isn't it? And I'm impressed that they got a blue plaque.
And like, if I was gonna imagine like a witch house, like this has the right vibe, like the porch and the, you know, like,
yeah,
and
the
it's different
gables.
than, it's interesting, like architecturally different than the other houses right around, which do not look witchy.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
this
that's
is like a cool
interesting.
witch house. And like, is it old tree?
Yeah.
Maybe old enough that you knew this tree?
Very
Yeah,
possibly.
possibly.
That's exciting.
Certainly the one behind it is.
Yeah,
One sitting over
definitely.
there, right there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I always find that
Certainly.
interesting when you look at a place and you look at the sort of trees and think, oh yeah, this one's
Right.
been witness to things.
Right, we should look up some old photos and see like how it's the same and how it's
Yes.
different.
Yeah,
we should do that.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there is. So that is it, and there we are.
Thank you
Thank
for bringing
you.
me here.
You're very welcome, darling.
Okay, so we've got to return for a couple of those properties, I think, because we didn't quite find one of them, did we? But we knew roughly the road, and we had a good guess at which house we thought it might be,
Right.
by how witchy it looked. But yes, that's been good fun.
It's been
I
fantastic.
agree. Thank you for taking me.
A little
It
bit
was
different from
delightful.
normal podcast videos.
Right? Which tour?
Witch tour, yeah, absolutely. Witch tour 26. So yeah, good, and that was been great fun.
Oh, I had so
Really
much fun.
enjoyable.
Thank you so much for bringing me out.
Yeah, that was really nice, and we found a nice place to have lunch, haven't
Right?
Yeah, we did. So hopefully you'll be able to come back when the sun's out.
Right.
But it's been an absolute joy.
It has. I'm so
Thank
glad
you,
I got to meet
Sarah.
you guys.
Me too.
Like, for real, in person.
we? Yeah, instead of just faces
Absolutely.
passing in a
Exactly.
On Facebook.
yeah.
That's wonderful.
Good, that's lovely.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.